Hi, I'm Frank Masiosi, and I'm here with former Mayor Jordan Glatt. This is one in the series of 6 interviews of the Summit Common Council candidates. We're here today with Matt Gould. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, and thank you, Frank, and thank you, Jordan, for having me.
Thank you. So we will be asking you questions. We'll alternate, and you have to answer the questions.
Terrific.
Okay, great.
Yeah, terrific.
Jordan, you want to kick it off?
So Matt, first thanks for raising your hand and deciding to run. So what personal attributes make you right for council?
Yes. Well, I've thought about this a lot. I think, first and foremost, I have a very high level of enthusiasm, and I get stuff done. I've worked my whole career as a television producer, and my job for that, for the most part, has been to create something out of nothing. So it's a matter of, you start with a blank slate, you have nothing, you end up with a television series that, sometimes would be seen by hundreds of millions of people. So it's a matter of, creativity, collaboration, and hard work that I think I've put into my career the whole time, and I think I can bring those skills to council as well.
Great.
Matt, what caused you to decide to run? Most people give the stock answer, I just want to give back.
Right.
But that doesn't tell me much. Why are you running?
I was inspired to run 2 years ago. I started thinking about it when I worked with David Naidu, who's a current councilman. And I ride the train into the city with him in the morning. So we would strategize about him running, and I got interested in that. And then after he won, we would talk about the issues that are facing the city and everything he's doing about it. And at that time, I started to realize how, I love this town. And I started to realize how it doesn't just happen that it's great. It's a lot of hard work from a lot of dedicated people. And I realized that I have some skills I could bring to the table to bring a different voice to council than is currently on council. And so I thought that I should do it. More of a sense of obligation in a way than I just want to help.
Okay.
So what's the difference between a Republican and a Democrat on the local level here in Summit?
Well, I've thought about this a lot. I know that the stock answer is probably, there's no Republican or Democratic way to fix a pothole. And I think that that is true on the one hand. On the other hand, I think there are certain concepts to being a Democrat, which I am, that I think would be important to have a voice in Summit, a bit more of it than it does. First of all, just so that it's more balanced, so that it's not just one party system. And second, I think it's that kind of difference of opinion that brings about good debate, that brings about the best solutions.
Okay. There's a lot of talk around the country about the notion of sanctuary city. Would you designate Summit a sanctuary city? And if there are undocumented people in town, what would you do about that?
I think that's a good question and a thorny question. I don't know that I have the specific answer at this moment. I think I would have to sit down with Chief Weck. I think we're blessed in Summit to have a police department that works so well with the citizens and is so respected by the people in Summit, and equally shows so much respect towards the citizens of Summit. So I would, in a way, want to sit down with Chief Weck and see what he wants to do about that problem. Do I think Summit needs to be designated a sanctuary city? I don't think that this is the type of place where people are coming. I think that's a question for more large cities like New York City. I think for Summit, I think we should work with the police and find answers on a case-by-case basis.
One of the big issues in town is all-day kindergarten, whether we should provide it or not. What are your views on that?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about full-day kindergarten, and I think I tallied it up before I got here that I'm up to about 1,500 doors that I've knocked on and spoken with, hundreds of residents, and full-day kindergarten is definitely a burning issue for many of them. In general, I'm in favor of full-day kindergarten. I think that we should have it. I think when 80% of the towns in New Jersey do have it and we don't, it puts us at a competitive disadvantage in terms of people moving in, and therefore I think it affects property values in a negative way to not have it. Second, I think it's a middle-class tax. I think public education should not be, you shouldn't have to pay for public education. Now, that said, I don't I know it's expensive to run that program, and I think that we have to find a way to run the program within our budget. So I would challenge the Board of Ed to go back and look at, again, how much is this going to cost? What's the most cost-effective way we can do this? And then find a way to work it within the budget that we already have.
Okay. Used to be, not too many years ago, that about half our tax burden was for the schools and the other half for government. And the 50%, 52% for schools is about the same as it's been. But the other half used to be 50-50 between the city and the county. Now the county is up around 29% and the city has shrunk to 21%. So there's an ever-increasing burden that we're bearing because of county taxes, and there was a bipartisan study some years ago, I don't know if this is still true, that found that 10 cents on the dollar came back to Summit. What would you do about this?
Well, the more I've learned about this county tax situation, the more upset I am about it. I know that we're about 4% of the residents of Union County, and we pay about 10% of the taxes, to put it another way. So it's not fair. It's an unfair burden on Summit, and we've got to, I know that we've been trying for a long time to get them to rein in their spending at the county level, and also to have us pay our fair share, and I know that we don't. So I think we've got to find a way to express to them that they're not being fair to Summit, and to get them to change their behavior.
Okay.
Every candidate talks about improving the downtown. What ideas do you have specifically in that area?
Well, I have two big ideas, I guess, to boil it down to two. One, I would set up an economic development committee, and we did a joint campaign letter with my two running mates to say, I think we're all under threat from e-commerce. Every town in the country is under threat from e-commerce, and we've got to hit that head on. We're doing pretty well right now. I understand we only have about 4 or 4.5% vacancy, so that's good, but these things can move fast. So we've got to set up this committee to be really on top of the trends, and to really lure the kind of businesses to town that we want to bring to town. And that means also streamlining the permitting process so that businesses can get up and running faster. And then I've been following the plans for the redevelopment of the Broad Street corridor, which I'm in favor of because and I'm happy about, because I think the work-live kind of space that I envision will really help to keep the downtown vital, and also provide housing for groups that currently don't have enough housing, like senior citizens. I think there's not enough for them. So if we can get them, in the downtown shopping, active, people of all age groups, that's what I think we need to do. And I think we just need to put dedicated people onto it, and then we need to really go out and approach the businesses that we want to come in, and have them and encourage them to come in.
Great.
Matt, tell us about specifically personal attributes that you have that make you best suited for this job.
So I think there's three things that really define my career, my job persona, I guess you'd say. One is creativity, just thinking of lots of different ideas all the time. That's what's required from a television executive. Two is collaboration, which is that people have very different ideas, and you have to find a way to work with them. It doesn't mean rolling over, but it does mean coming to a solution, sort of a bipartisan solution if there's two people have different ideas. And three is hard work, because television is no France. We don't work 30 hours a week. We work 100 hours a week, and that's what I've always done. And if I'm passionate about the work and I love the work, I don't mind that at all. So hard work, creativity, collaboration.
So you're obviously not running for office in France, so we know, so we know that.
With all due respect to our French viewers.
What are the biggest things in Summit you feel that need to be fixed?
I think fixed. Well, I do think the full-day kindergarten issue is an issue. I think we've got to stay on top of our school system. I wouldn't say fixed, but I would say watched carefully. I just spent a good amount of time this summer in South Korea working on a project, and I also spent a lot of time recently in Hong Kong and in Tokyo, and I noticed a few things, which is that in Asia, their infrastructure is more advanced than us, their education is more advanced than us. They're getting to be a lot more competitive than us. And I know that that's sort of an issue for America as a whole, but on the local level, we have to do everything we can to prepare our young people, because they're going to be competing in a world economy, not just a U.S. economy. And so that's something I'm very concerned about, especially as I have a junior in the high school.
One of the big responsibilities of council members is managing the city budget. What are your thoughts on that? How would you, both on the revenue and the expense side?
On the expense side, I think that Mike McTiernan and the current council have been doing a really good job of keeping, of not letting the increases go up. I'm stuttering here, but of reining the budget in. On the revenue side, I think that we have to think about smart redevelopment to bring more tax dollars in. So I think that when Merck left and Celgene took over, that wasn't handled that well by the city. I would think that, from what I understand, Celgene is going to pay a lot less in taxes than Merck did, and I think we perhaps should have looked a bit more carefully about creative, out-of-the-box solutions we could have done to bring more industry in. I also know that our the portion of taxes that's supported by residential taxes is going up. Used to be about 75%, now it's about 82%, and I think that's not a good trend if you think about volatility of the housing market. And so I think we have to bring in more commercial, more industrial, in a smart way, not rapid growth, but in a smart, targeted way to make sure that we keep bringing our revenue up.
So a large part of our population is seniors. What would you have to say to that community in town?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think one other thing we have to work on, we don't do a good enough job, I think, of making Summit affordable for seniors, and I don't think there's enough options for seniors for living. I think that's why a lot of people move out of town once their children graduate from high school. And I don't think we want that. We want the whole life cycle to be represented here and to feel welcome here. So I think it's about housing options for them, transportation options for them, and then even things like road safety. I think our streets are really safe. I think that Chief Weck has done an amazing job of keeping the streets safe. But one thing I've noticed is there's a perception around town of people don't feel safe, and I think about the seniors especially crossing the street and how they feel rushed sometimes, and I think we have to find solutions for that.
Well, Jordan asked about the seniors. Let me ask you about the youth. When Jordan was mayor and I was council president, we actually had a big problem that we needed to address for the kids, and that was lack of synthetic turf. There were lots of sports being played, the fields were overused, and it was a big issue at the time.
Right.
It no longer is, which is nice. But are the needs of the young people being adequately addressed at all economic levels?
Well, I think Summit does a better job than 99% of other towns to take care of our youth. I think a couple things that could be improved is there aren't a lot of entertainment options for them in the town, especially when the movie theater closed. And I think that we could work on that. This goes back with the economic development of the downtown, but we need to find more entertainment options for them, I think. And we need to find more sort of safe spaces for them that aren't controlled by adults, so that they can find themselves and so that they will want to do it. Because, if an adult tells a kid it's cool, they're going to definitely think it's uncool. So we've got to let them find their own space, but have it be safe activities that they can do. So that's where I think we have to work with them on that.
Okay.
So there's been quite a few car thefts and break-ins in town. What do you feel that we should be doing that we're not? We're close to 24. It's easy in, easy out. What do you think the city could be doing?
Yes. That's a good question, and it's heartbreaking in a way that there has been this a bit of uptick in crime, because people talk about people always talk about, in the good old days we didn't even lock our doors, and I feel like in Summit we are sort of living in the good old days right now for the most part, but the break-ins and crime, I think it's a matter of education. I think the enforcement, again, just to compliment Chief Weck, I think he's doing a great job in enforcement. I think it's probably a bit about education. It's about telling people, not to leave valuables in the car, to lock their cars, to make sure that they have adequate lighting. That is one thing I would say. A lot of the streets are pretty dark as I've been walking around at night canvassing. I think we need more street lights, more lights. I think light deters crime.
Okay. 100 years ago or so, a little bit more than 100 years ago, I think it was, Council adopted a resolution saying that neither the mayor nor the council members should get paid, and they don't. They don't get paid, which is, I don't know if it's unique, but it's unusual. In most other towns, they do get paid. You think that was a good decision, or not a good one, or one that should be reviewed for change?
I think that's a good question. First of all, I'd say that I have no desire to be paid for serving on the council. But second, I would say, obviously, if the position doesn't pay, then it limits involvement to a certain economic status. That if you can't afford it, you're not going to do it. So to that degree, I think maybe it should be paid, especially the mayor, seeing how many hours a week that Mayor Radis puts in, for example, or Mayor Glatt put in when he was there. I think it's a lot to ask from somebody, and somebody has to be pretty comfortable economically to do it. And so I would say to open it up to everybody, we should examine it being paid. But again, I would not vote on this for myself. I would vote on it perhaps for subsequent councils.
Okay, all right, okay, fair enough. We've got about a minute left before
Right.
the
We have about a
wrap-up.
minute, so I'll give you an easy question.
Oh, okay.
Sarcastically. Every council candidate talks about transparency on council. How would you improve transparency to get more people involved and know what's going on in town?
Right. Well, I actually think the council tries to be transparent, but I think that they think of it as a government, like a government or as a citizen, which is that, well, I put something out there, people should know it. But I know, coming from television and being associated with advertising, that you have to say things, 10 times before anyone actually hears it. And so I think it's about really ramping up the social media output from the council and from the mayor's office, really ramping up the television output, the print output, and really making it a big push to let people know. Because, like for instance, with the overlay zones that were a big topic this summer, I mean, there was 2 or 3 council meetings about it and 3 or 4 planning board or zoning board meetings about it. And yet, last night I was walking on Plain Street and everyone, was bringing it up like it was the first time they ever heard of it. So I think that council and the government in general is putting out the stuff, but they're not putting it out enough. So
Okay.
that's what I think would increase transparency.
Okay, we're down to the last 2 minutes. If you would turn to the camera and tell the folks whatever you'd like to tell them.
I'm Matt Gould, and I hope you'll vote for me in November for the Ward 1 Common Council seat. I love Summit. I've lived here for 9 years with my wife Stephanie and our 3 daughters, who are students in the Summit public school system. In recent years, I've become increasingly engaged in our community, serving as a trustee for the Visual Arts Center of New Jersey, as well as on the Summit Public Art Committee. The more I raise my hand to volunteer, the more I see the effort it takes to make Summit such a great place. As a senior television executive, I've worked in cities and towns throughout the USA and the world. I've been embedded with police departments, fire departments, and EMTs. I've walked many different walks. That's how I know that Summit is truly a special place, which is why I want to pitch in and make our city the most livable and safe community for all of us going forward. I believe I have the right skills to help, and I know I have the level of enthusiasm to put in the hard work. I've spent my career finding creative solutions to thorny problems, managing large budgets with thin margins, and championing collaboration among wildly different groups of people. I want to help Summit meet the challenges of our rapidly changing world. We need to stretch every dollar we take in and face our fiscal responsibilities with innovative ideas while keeping Summit affordable. We need to help our downtown continue to thrive, especially considering the threat that e-commerce poses to small towns like Summit. We need to build on the Summit Police Department's and Chief Weck's hard work to make our streets more safe for cars, bikes, and pedestrians. We need parking solutions for our residents and businesses, and we need to make sure our schools remain top-notch. I'll bring fresh thinking and hard work to the job, so please vote for me on November 7th.